off right at the tee. Everything in the out here in the Western Reserve is a grid of 90-degree angles. Bradley Road is north and south. I mean, you can get any compass you want, it's still north and south, and everything else is east and west. If you want to get to Parma, just try it. You can't get there from here. You got to go all this zigzag thing or whatever else it is. So anyways, I said, we could exchange a triangle of land from you. We would come up here so many feet on number 6 and cut into your land, and then we would cut across and you would get the other parcel on your side. And he said, well, that's no problem, because they were going, they knew the highway was coming up, everything, and they didn't have to weigh in on us, and we didn't have to horn in on them. So that's how we put that package together, getting those triangles, so that otherwise, I'll tell you, the lot line would have been, you would have been teeing off, the number 7 tee would have been behind our property line. It would have been on our property, but it would have been a square thing like this on it. So we were able to get that done in that thing. And going back, and I think we talked about this before, when Andy Hornick and Manco were involved, the property line ran right down along number 6, and so there were all grapevines there. This is go back when I was a kid, and in the early days. So poor farmer could never get any grapes off of his field there, because the golfers would walk in, grab a handful of those Concord grapes and chew on, and spit the seeds out and everything else. So for 10 feet or 15 feet back on the thing, it was no harvest at all on the thing. So they went to him and said, could we buy that? And so he said, you might as well sell them out. So we got 100 feet there at that time, which ended up being that chunk that's in the back that they're talking about maybe negotiate and maybe could sell now. There's 3 acres back in there. It also gave us, behind on 6, yes. Right. And it also gave us, because our property line came before we got that, but we had acquired the where the equipment building is. It came over and then came straight this way over to 13T and then cut straight over. So you had from behind 6T and everything else. You could shake hands with a neighbor if that got built. So they were able to get that chunk of land. And then we got from the Lutheran Church this chunk, and then we did this. Golly, it's 30 years ago.
That 20 acres that you said on here, that's Devonshire. Is that
where
Devonshire is in?
Yeah.
So anything from south of Hilliard was that 20 acres that we exchanged, and then
and we got it was about, I'm going to say about 23 acres. We ended up about 17 because Hilliard cutting off a nip of his land, and then he had some on the other side, and they made a cash settlement on that, and we got it all filed on it. But that's Devonshire. Then they went in and developed that, put that street in, and that's where some of our members live, right?
Yes.
And our manager.
Yes.
That's. I guess we made a mistake letting Marlette and. Yeah, right.
They're on our land.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. If you, wasn't for us, you wouldn't be here now.
Well, that's interesting about that number 6 hole with the great vineyard there, and the members walking down. And a lot of people try to hook the ball probably to get into that grind.
Yeah, a hook isn't an easy shot in golf, for most people. But you didn't have to slice it very far to get into the grapevine, anyways. And it's interesting as you look at it now, because you look at that 100 feet. You start looking. Now this is back in. I could look it up in the records, but I'm going to say 55, 56. On that, you look at that thing and you say, well, how could he have farmed that? Well, I'll tell you, in 40 years, those trees grow. There weren't any trees there. It was grapevines on it. And as we all know from Charlie Lott's efforts around here, where Jim Noel had to start thinning this crop out around here of trees. We were engulfed in it. So you're looking at a lot of tree growth that took place in some of this land that we acquired. But anyways, I think it was a good move, and it kept people, and people don't understand. It's not a matter of if they developed it and whatever they put in it with a single family or condominium. But I mean, someone can build a house there and they could have a swimming pool. They could have chickens. They could have dogs barking. They could have a kennel. You know, if that's right in back of your tee, that's not a very pleasant atmosphere. So that stuff protects you. I mean, it's not that we're probably going to use that land there, but at least we can sell it off and take another 100 or 150 feet to protect ourselves around our
The green border type of thing.
yeah, right, so that no one's on top of you, and then whatever happens beyond that, it's...
Once you had accumulated all that land on, were there thoughts or discussions about how it might be used at certain points in time?
There wasn't at that time, because you have to remember, we're still trying to get those members in there on that thing, but we were, the whole thought was that it would protect ourselves on the thing, and that was the thought. They came up later, and I think when Benson was president, or maybe even before that, and he got a hold of Mike Hersden, who was the architect out of Columbus, and said, see what you can do with getting another 9 holes in here. Because originally they were going to have 36 holes here, you know, before Hilliard came through and Mason's going to build all this stuff. So Hersden came up with a scheme, and it would be sort of a glorified executive course. It was a nice little layout on it. It would have consumed all that land. We would have been, you know, just like Bradley Road here, we have been teeing off down Hilliard Road on the thing and hooking back in. One of the problems with it was that it had been relocating the tennis courts, relocating part of the driving range, and it would have hemmed it all in. And the merits became, one, is it worth doing that? The idea being, and as Hersden said, if you have 27 holes of golf, you can, and suppose you had 300 resident members or golfing members. If you go to another 9, you can actually get close to 600 resident members, because you can stagger those starts and everything, and then you get more capacity, you know, hopefully not adding on to the clubhouse, but you get more use in the clubhouse. So
Which drives the money. And
drives the money. You know, the anchor to all of these things is, you know, this building as you see it now, and of course you got a marvelous facility, but they're not. It's a club. It's not. You're trying to make a practical use out of it, and it's like anything else you have in business. I mean, I'm sure High Level Screw Products didn't have just machines sitting there. They want those machines and those people working them, right. And it's tough to do in a private club. I mean, you just don't have. You don't have the market to draw on. You got 500 people. I mean, 300, you know, and so it's a club. People gotta read it. I don't understand why, you know, it costs just as much like what it does at Stouffer's or something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, Stouffer's doesn't have any more than what you have. Stouffer's doesn't have any more than what you have here. I mean, as far as facilities and staffing it and running it, and except they're open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, and they draw from a minimum of 60, 75,000 people. Westwood tried to get Stouffer's to come in and run their kitchen, and Vernon Stouffer belonged to Westwood and lived down in the Winton place, and they did catering. They did catering. They did hospital, institutional food and staff. And he says, "There's no way that you can make that work." He says, "No way." And he says, "There's no way we would even take it on." He says, "We look," and I'm not right in this entirely, but close. He says, "We would not put a Stouffer's restaurant in unless there was a population of 75 or 100,000 people to draw within that thing. Not coming from Akron or from Sandusky, but I mean within that market area. Now you can have your cooks and your service and the whole thing." He says, "You've got 500 people here." He says, it just doesn't work out."
Right.
So
I'd like to get your opinion on the advancements that, that started maybe 10, 15 years ago with the long-range planning and the master plan schedule for the golf course, and what's occurred there, and master plan for maybe the balance of the property and so on. If you're familiar with some of those things and thoughts, and what you saw happen and what your thinking would be.
Well, of course, Vic, I mean, now you're talking in the reflective mood for me, because I've been out of it. But I'll say one thing I enjoyed about Lakewood Country Club. There was always something going on. I was in the building business, and building, whether it's a new green or a thing. I mean, this is just so exciting to see a change, or whether it's redecorating or whatever else it is, and see progress instead of the thing just deteriorating. So I think they've done a marvelous job. I mean, in that having hiring Kay and come up with a plan, because you have to, you have to be careful. Someone has an idea, well, we'll build a new hole here, or we'll do this, or we'll do that, and everything else, and then someone will put a trap here, and the next guy takes the trap out, and everyone's got their little input into it. No expertise. And Charlie Lott used to say the best thing, he says, that ever happened here was hiring an architect, whether it's building the 12th hole or redesigning a sand trap. He says, yeah, I can do it. He said, I might come up with the same idea, but he says, you're going to have 100 people that are not going to like it. And he says, then they're all over your case. And he says, at this, he say, we hired an expert. He's known, he's recognized, he's this, he's that, and everything else, and this is what he did, and this is how we follow. Now, he said, all I have to do is build it. And he says, that was easy. So I'd have to say, I think they made tremendous progress here, especially in the last 15 years, and continuing to upgrade and make this thing work. I mean, I even had reservations with, gee, we're going to spend all this money in that men's locker room, everything else, and wood lockers. Well, the old lockers weren't too bad. They were new. They were better than Westwood had, but they were dated. I mean, thing, and they tore that apart, and it's breathtaking. I mean, look, and expanding. Well, originally, our men's grill was half of the pub, not at the porch even, out part of the thing, and they pull the folding door through on the thing, and the guys would be in there playing their gin rummy and everything. So there's probably room for 4 tables and everything. Had a grill, a kitchenette in the pub area. You came in, you could get your home fries and everything else, and of course you could smell them all cooking. They're frying. So, but that was a big upgrade from what we had. So they've made progress, not without some problems. I mean, trying to do it and everything. But you look at what we have now, and both on the golf course. I mean, they're doing things. They're doing things, and they're for a reason. And I think they've been very good. And
Good. Well, I think we've covered a majority of anything else.
Well, we were talking about changes. How did new number 12 come to be?
yeah, well, I was involved with that in spades,
Now we're going
because Oakley said, "You guys must be out of your mind." He says on this, because we were still fighting for bucks. And most people today wouldn't realize that. I'd have to get hold of some of the old timers. And as you played number 11 hole, there was a couple trees down on the right-hand side, just, and I'll say a row, but I mean essentially just a row of one tree, not staggered north and south, but just a row down that way. That tee on there pointed right down that way, didn't point out to the left, went right down between those trees, between 14 on the other side of the other. Well, you know how guys play golf, the banana, and half of those shots would be, literally, they'd be in the middle of 14, not half, but I mean a lot of them would be in the middle of number 14 fairway down there in the area where the big tree was, and on out. And that just didn't make any sense, I mean, on the thing. On top of that, Manco, during the '68 Cleveland Open, expanded the tee on number 6, not a 6, a number 13 back, so there'd be a little longer course. And he also did it on number 12. Well, if you played the back tees, not all of us do, but it is played, and there were trees around there up in front. I mean, you were whistling a ball literally right by the back end of number 12 green on the thing. And if it hit a tree, it could ricochet and everything else. And now the guys that play the blue tees shouldn't have that problem, but they do have that problem on occasion. and that. So there was a danger factor involved with that. And Sindelar was the chairman of the Greens Committee, which he was a great guy. He really was, and he was dedicated. He didn't want to be on the board. He didn't want to, but he was dedicated to improving this golf course. And I said to Cindy, and I was liaison at that point, and Sam Myers was the liaison to the E&E partner, hired by Mr. Ernst. This is how it's going back into history. He was hired by Mr. Ernst. Anyways, I said, you know, we could do something out here. We own this land. It's just sitting there vacant. And I said, we could build another 12th hole there on the thing, and then take and reshape number 11 so it went out to the left. The big mound on number 11 presently, which we scalloped off the top of it because they were just pimples like that, was half in the rough. That gives you an idea. Was half in the rough on the left. So I said we could shape this thing over this way on the thing, and then hit into the green, and then abandon 12 as a whole and have a new 12 over here, and then we don't have the problem with people ricocheting off, and if they're playing the back tees on number 12 green. So it was a whole safety issue on the thing, and we had the land. So I can remember Oakley, he says, you guys must be, we're struggling for bucks, you know. He says, you guys have to be out of your mind to think that you're going to build a golf hole. And he said, we're trying to, you know, make ends meet and do this and that and everything else. And so, Charlie Lott, what's the price going to be? And we got Kidwell in Hersden. Hersden was still in college at the time. And they were getting his doctorate at Ohio State. And so we got a hold of Kidwell to come up and design this thing, and then Charlie would figure out how long he had to sit on a tractor to build it and the whole thing. And it was going to cost $24,000 on the thing. So, and we don't have that much money. So we put it through the through the board. We'll start on this thing, and we'll make it a 3-year project. Because, I mean, Charlie Lott's got other things to do. I mean, you just can't quit. He's got to cut grass and do these things. We'll take $8,000 a year for 3 years and get this thing built with a lake and get the dirt piled up and everything else. And if we run out of money after the first year, we can just stop. And if we run out of money after the second year, we can just stop. But we can continue on this thing, and in 3 years we'll have a new 12th hole, and then meanwhile they can move the sprinkler heads over on the other and so on. So they bought into it, not without some controversy, because people were still thinking we could build a condominium back in there and everything, but we did do that. Charlie sat on that tractor for 3 years, and we got it built and opened it up. We actually opened it up for our board of directors outing, final year of my presidency, which had been 75, and then they opened it up full time then the next year. I think it made a big improvement. And then we kept the old hole because we could practice on it. Well, now we use it alternately if they want to do it. The old 12th hole had a problem. Again, it mostly was trees which have been taken down, but it had some moguls in front of the thing. You probably see them on the Tillinghast plan. So if you missed the shot to the green, it would bounce and roll this way and roll that way, which was part of the challenge. But they finally couldn't grow grass on it, so they just leveled it out. It became kind of mundane, and then of course the trees overhung it. Even in the Cleveland Open, it was literally a sand green. They sanded that thing in, and it was, you know, it's the way it was. And so this alleviated that situation. Then cutting trees down helped, and they were able to play it back. So I think it's unique, and this is probably part of the dumb things that you do, or the smart things you do that are smarter because of circumstances. Originally we were to practice on the thing, and we could do that, and that's a whole other story and everything. And then they finally took it out of the practice range, and I see we're going to have a new practice chipping green and everything over here now anyways, 30 years later. But